Appreciate y'all being here a little bit early today. It is our Thursday show. We are going to be speaking to Batya Ungar-Sargon. She can be followed on X, Bungarsargon, just her last name. Book is Second Class, How the Elites Betrayed America's Working Men and Women. And then we're going to speak to Jennifer Van Laar after that from Red State, Jen Van Laar, Vanlaar. She's got a lot of interesting material out there recently, including things about Kamala Harris and why she's evading press conferences and some interesting ideas. Batya, I very enjoyed, I would say, seeing her interviewed by Megyn Kelly. I followed her yesterday, and we had Megyn in our opening little sequence here. Man, what a difference a year and a half makes when you listen to that interview she and I did a year and a half ago. All right, so we're going to get into it. We're watching you on the Restream and over from the Rumble Rants. We'll start with Batya Ungar-Sargon. Be right back after this.
Our laws, as it pertains to substances, are draconian and bizarre. The psychopaths start this way. He was an alcoholic because of social media and pornography, PTSD, love addiction, fentanyl and heroin. Ridiculous. I'm a doctor, for sake. Where the hell do you think I learned that? I'm just saying, you go to treatment before you kill people. I am a clinician. I observe things about these chemicals. Let's just deal with what's real. We used to get these calls on Loveline all the time. Educate adolescents and to prevent and to treat. If you have trouble you can't stop and you want to help stop it, I can help. I got a lot to say. I got a lot more to say.
Joint and muscle pains are exhausting and frustrating, but I've got a over-the-counter medication I'll introduce you to that provides great relief using the power of, check it out, chili peppers. Capsidin is made with a proprietary formula that contains no non-steroidal anti-inflammatory agents, no opioids, no anesthetic or steroid, nothing, no chance for addiction, no side effects, no chance it's going to interact with other medication you might be taking. Capsidin contains capsaicin, which is the substance in chili peppers that burns your tongue. That gives you that burny feeling. And of course, I've recommended capsaicin creams to patients over the years, but other capsaicin creams burn your skin. That's what makes capsidin so unique. In clinical trials, capsidin has actually been demonstrated not to burn.
I've been using capsidin to relieve my pain in my hands and my wrist from carpal tunnel syndrome and arthritis. The results have been amazing. I use it every day during my show, and I highly recommend it.
Get the pain relief you need from various sources, even backache, sprains, bruises even. Order now at capsidin.com/Drew to get a 15% discount plus free shipping. That is CAPSADYN, capsidin.com/DREW. As I was saying, we'll have Jennifer Van Laar in here a second. She's managing editor at Red State, investigative journalist. She has broken a number of high-profile stories, including reports on Representative Katie Hill's ethics violations, which led to her resignation. She is a fifth-generation Californian and can talk a little bit about the catastrophe that's going on in this state. You can follow her, as I said, on X at Jen Van Laar, Laar. And we are about to welcome Batya Ungar-Sargon. She's the deputy opinion editor at Newsweek and author of 2 books. Bad News, How Woke Media is Undermining Democracy, and Second Class, How the Elites Betrayed America's Working Men and Women. She holds a PhD in English literature from Berkeley and has written various publications, including the New York Times, Washington Post. You can follow her on X at Bungar-Sargon, Bungar-Sargon, S-A-R-G-O-N. Batya, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure and a privilege to be here with you. I'm such a huge, huge fan of yours.
You were very kind to say so. You know, the one of the things that surprises me about your pedigree is that they allow you to speak your mind at Newsweek. That seems odd to me. Are you holding by a thread, or are you inside the belly of the beast? And do you have any observations from the inside for us?
I gotta tell you, Newsweek is really open to views from across the political spectrum. I'm the opinion editor there. I'm in charge of the opinion section. We host a daily debate every single day. You will find a conservative and a liberal duking it out. Our owner and the editor-in-chief, my bosses, they really, really want conservatives to feel represented and like they have a home in Newsweek. And that's my mandate. And I'm very proud to say I think I do it very well.
It is. I got to tell you, I have so much that goes on in the world that makes me feel bad, and this just makes me feel great. It makes me so hopeful that I hope it succeeds, so it can be a model for other organizations to do what they had always done, what we always thought we were when we read papers and looked at journalist material, and it just went sideways. Do you agree with me on that? Do you see more hope, or are you just one little shining bright light within a sea of trouble?
Listen, I don't think anybody could exist in America over the last month and not feel just the deepest levels of disgust for our national liberal media, the way that they first ran cover for President Biden. The only people with access to President Biden, to the doctor's logs, to the cabinet, simply running cover to protect him because he was in power. And then when the American people on their own learned the truth through watching that debate, the 180 that the media did, suddenly attacking him in the most brutal form, because of course, 96% of American journalists are Democrats. And so they then had to get him off the stage. They had to get him out of the running because they couldn't bear the idea that Donald Trump was going to win. And now, for their next magic trick, right, they're disappearing Kamala Harris's entire record because, of course, the media absolutely wants her to win. I mean, I don't think anybody can look at that and feel anything but disgust unless you're part of the tiny leftist elite that they are catering to. So that's what my first book was about, Bad News, was how our media got so corrupt. And the argument that I made in that book was the problem with our media is not so much that it's leftist, it's that it is woke, which is a reflection of not just the radical nature of our media and of people who graduate from college in America today, but the fact that that radical ideology actually reflects enormous economic privilege, meaning the problem with them is not just that they're left, it's that they're left and rich. And if you look at most of the ideology they're pushing, it is a smokescreen for the way in which Democrat policy has sold out the working class, plundered hardworking Americans, and put that money in the pockets of over-credentialed leftist elites. And that's what my second book is about. Second Class, How the Elites Betrayed America's Working Men and Women.
Are you familiar with Rob Henderson's work? He's a social psychologist, PhD at Oxford. Yeah. And he has the concept of luxury ideas, I guess,
Beliefs,
or luxury principle, beliefs, luxury beliefs. And his thing came from going to Yale having come from the destroyed working class circumstance. And as he got to Yale on a military scholarship, essentially, having been in the Marines, and was shocked that these kids that grew up in such privilege had these extraordinarily bizarre ideas from his point of view as somebody from a working class environment.
That's exactly right. And I just take it one step further, which is, it's not just that you need enormous economic privilege in order to have these cockamamie views, right? Like that it's racist to police our southern border, right? Or that marriage is an antiquated institution. It's not just that you need enormous privilege to hold those views. It's that those views themselves are a mechanism by which the credentialed elites are plundering the working class. It is a mechanism for an upward transfer of wealth. Let's take immigration as an example. The Democrats, back in the 90s, when they represented the working class, they were the ones who were against immigration. Why? Because if you import 10 million people who are all going to work in 5 working class industries, it's the most obvious thing in the world that they're going to drive down the wages in those industries. And the Democrats, as seeing themselves back in the day, in those ancient halcyon times, saw themselves as representing labor. So they wanted policies that would protect the working class. So they were against immigration. Now they've done this 180 to where you're a racist if you think that we should have limits on immigration to protect, by the way, yes, Donald Trump is right, Black jobs, the jobs of Black Americans who were the number one victims of these open border policies. Okay, you can read about that in Second Class as well, about working class Black Americans who are struggling because they're competing with illegal immigrants. So this is just a fact, but they will call you racist if you point this out. And it's not just because they want power. Of course, they want power. It's because, Dr. Drew, they are lining their pockets with the proceeds of this open border, right? They are the employers of the illegal workers. And if they had to employ Americans because we had actual, border security, they would then have to pay those Americans much more. So it's not just the luxury belief that you need to be protected from illegal immigrants in your industry in order to have such a stupid view. It's that they're literally getting rich off of these ideologies.
So what happened other than woke graduates coming in? We have the populace, or at least the ethos of those journalists throughout my lifetime, were always going at the people in power. And I remember back when, during the Trump presidency, because I was actually at CNN, I think, was I still there then? Probably was. And there was a lot of, my God, can you believe Fox News is carrying water for the administration? That's all I hear is the administration's material there. They were so critical of that. And that felt totally consistent to me with who they were, which was always, whether you go back to Watergate, whatever. But then it just shifted, right? And it shifted to be they're the ones now carrying the water for the administration, particularly the executive branch of the administration, which I started thinking, well, maybe it was they didn't like those guys in power, but now that they're in power, they like it. And then, you know what I mean? They were
100%.
actually biased or the word, what would the word be? Bigoted against the people who were in power at the time. But because now it's my people in power, now I can go carry water for them and it's no big deal.
Totally. It's one of many reversals, by the way, that the Democratic Party has done, right? The Democrats used to be an anti-war, pro-worker, socially moderate party, right? Remember, abortion should be, rare, safe, and legal, right? Now, the Democrats are pro-war, right? It's Ukraine war all the way. They're much more pro-corporate than Donald Trump, for example. Wall Street's lining up to back Kamala Harris. Wall Street gave more money to Joe Biden than they did to Donald Trump, right? And they're socially radical. And in the meantime, the GOP has become the anti-war party, the pro-worker party. And now that Trump has sidelined Project 2025, the socially moderate party. So you see how there's been a total reversal as the Democrats abandoned the working class to cater to the college educated. And to your point, the way that reversal happened was you had a whole bunch of people who, journalism used to be a working class trade. So the kind of person who used to become a journalist was like the kid who sat in the back seat cracking wise at the teacher's expense, who was like super anti-authoritarian. So when all of his friends went to the factory, they were like, we can't use him. He doesn't take orders. So he would go to Washington and give people in power a hard time on behalf of his friends at home who were, truck drivers or cops or working the line at the factory. But what happened was throughout the second half of the 20th century, there was a status revolution among the kind of people who became journalists. It became really an elite caste. Now you will struggle to find a journalist who doesn't have not only a college degree, but a college degree from one of these fancy schmancy institutions like the Ivy Leagues. And as a result of that, the kind of person who becomes a journalist now is like the kid who every time the teacher asked a question was like, me, and the teacher had to pretend they didn't see them so other people would get a chance to answer the question, right? Journalists today are the kind of people who have never met an authority figure. They are not desperate to please. And that's how you have a press corps today that is carrying water for Joe Biden and for Barack Obama and for Kamala Harris, these people who they are supposed to have an adversarial relationship with, but they are desperate. You don't understand, Dr. Drew. These people would donate a kidney to get retweeted by AOC, okay? That's who our media is made up of. And I think that explains a lot about their coverage.
That's really funny. But there's an interesting sort of wrinkle in here too, which is the teachers that they were trying to impress were the anti-authoritarian individuals from the classroom before, right? And now those anti-authoritarians, it's really very interesting to me that you use that word, because the flip side of that is that when those people now that are teaching the class of enthusiasts, that group of professors and senior executives and senior journalists Now they're in power and they become authoritarian. It's the flip side of the same thing. When you're anti-authoritarian, it's because you're envious of the people in power, and God help everyone when that person gets in power. And that's what we're dealing with. And I think you put your finger on it, because their useful idiots are the ones they got in the classroom that were so enthusiastic to give them kidneys and whatever else they needed.
Yes, that's really, really well put. The slavishness, the herd mentality, how they do everything as a group. It is so disgusting to me as a person who sees my job as being a sort of independent thinker. I mean, as journalists, our first instinct should be, if you see something that you really want to be true, your first job is to be like, let me make sure that this is not my confirmation bias speaking, right? Like, that is our number one imperative, is to tell the truth and not get audience captured. And these people are audience captured, but their audience are the people in power. And so you have just this like absolute self-fulfilling little insider group of elites who have elite class solidarity, whether it's the elites in the media, the elites in politics, the elites in tech, whatever, wherever it is. And they're all reinforcing the power of the top 20%, people who have these degrees from these fancy schools.
I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about how they're portraying J.D. Vance these days. Again, he seems like a decent human. He was a Marine. He was self-made, brought himself up from awful circumstances. His mom is in recovery, thank God. What are your thoughts?
I think there's a lot of bullying going on. I mean, he's a person in power. He doesn't like need me to protect him, but the whole like weird thing, right? It's a form of bullying. It's to make him feel self-conscious about the fact that he grew up with nothing. And he's running, of course, against Kamala Harris, a woman whose parents both had PhDs, right? The number one predictor for upward mobility for a child, right? And so that matchup really puts the lie to the sort of white privilege nonsense. I do think it's really funny how, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance were downgraded from being fascists to just being weird, right? I mean, it's sort of the threat level is sort of like, right?
Yeah,
I think to me, the most interesting thing about J.D. Vance, and I'm so curious what you think about this, is he is a survivor of domestic violence. I recently reread Hillbilly Elegy, and it really, really comes across. And I can't help but see him through that light. First of all, in terms of representation, I think there's so many Americans who unfortunately are struggling with that. And to see a person, a self-made man, come out of that and not forget where he came from and want to represent those people again, I think it's really, really incredible. But I also think that you can kind of tell about him that his relationship with his past is not quite settled. What do you think, in your sort of expert opinion? Do you think about that?
It can't be. It can't be. Look, that is highly traumatic, and that trauma he carries around with him. What I would say is, again, it's hard to, politicians, it's always hard to know what's going on and what they mean, what's real and what's not. But my sense is, I don't feel the trauma. I don't see the trauma operating, which to me means he's had some treatment. So somebody helped him. And certainly the mom, 10 years into sobriety, well, that's treatment that does that. And so my bet is he participated in her care and contributed to her recovery, or else she probably wouldn't have done as well as she did. And that along the way must have healed some of his own stuff. But that's the miracle of recovery. That's how that works. And they could stand up and be a great model for that in the future if that's indeed what happened to them. Certainly the depths of addiction that the mom was in and the consequences it had on her family, that is a major burden that not a lot of people find their way out of. And so it's, again, I'm delighted to see that. I've helped a lot of people get through that. And it takes a good 5 years to get to a place of healing for everybody. And so there's that. What was the other thing I wanted to say about him that, shoot,
Can
it
I
just
ask you
escaped me.
something about that topic while you think of the question?
Yes.
Do you think
Oh, weird. I was going to talk about. Go ahead.
I was going to ask you, do you think that having a leader on a ticket the way that J.D. Vance is can help other Americans with their recovery? Does that representation truly have a kind of therapeutic ability, or is it just kind of a symbolic thing?
No. It depends how they talk about it, right? He's not really talking about it yet, and I understand they're on the campaign trail and whatnot. But if he got his mom out in front, talking about, look, we have our governor. Are you in California now?
No,
I know you went to Berkeley. Are you still here?
Yeah.
All right. Well, the governor of California is like, recovery is the stupidest thing we ever told drug addicts. Like, you are going to kill people, sir. You are actually actively killing people right now. Now, if we have that mom get up and go, no, it's a miracle, it's hard work, but I've been the full beneficiary of it. It's a program we call of attraction. And as such, it will motivate a lot of people to go do something, give them hope that there's something there for them. And it might break through some people's denial if they're properly set up for that. And so, I think if they talk about it properly, if they're in office, this could be a very, very powerful thing. Plus, it will shape the drug policy in this country. Under the Trump administration, a friend of mine was in there as the assistant drug czar, and he was magnificent as it pertained to this topic, but was completely crushed by some of the other forces that were there pushing these, I don't know what to call them, these models that are not recovery, that are necessary, they're important, but they're not thus saith the Lord. And so it's gravely concerning, and I'm very hopeful that they could have a significant impact. But back to the weird thing. Let me tell you what I think about the weird thing. And some of this is from Scott Adams. This is directed at men, in my opinion, because it takes us right back to being 17. Every male, when he is growing up and an adolescent and awkward and not knowing how to navigate social circles, nothing is worse than an adolescent male. We are just hopeless. And we are trying to navigate, we're trying to talk to people. And most of us have had an experience where some young woman that we sit down and try to talk to looks at us and goes, don't be weird, or you're weird. It cuts to the quick. It takes us right back to that. It's a deep wound that they're trying to evoke. And it's a mean girl strategy, 100% mean girl strategy. The problem is the people that are doing it aren't sort of at high enough status for us to care about them calling us weird. You know what I mean? They're being weird by doing it. You're weird to even bring it up. And so it's weird calling weird. It's just, I get where it's and it can cut. It's very cutting. It's very well, it's like professional grade persuasion stuff. But I don't think it's going to last. I don't think it's going to last because it's not coming from a place where it could persist, and mostly it just seems weird that they're calling somebody weird. So there you go. It just has a daisy chain quality to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's what I was trying to get at when I said bullying. That's exactly right. And I honestly think that something very interesting happened in terms of like the cool quotient, which is after Donald Trump stood up after almost being murdered in the face on live television, and just his first thought was, let me prevent a civil war. There is just something undeniably, unbelievably cool about that the press was not able to prevent its liberal audience from seeing. And meanwhile, Kamala Harris has this extremely fake, cringe kind of thing going for her. And she's trying to sort of borrow cool from the people around her, but it's really falling flat. There's been this big sort of yassification campaign around her, right, through the media, right? Let's go, girl, and what have you. And she's doing well in the polls right now, but I can't imagine that's going to last. As soon as she gets out in front of reporters and is forced to, interact as a human to human, that's going to come crumbling down because, there's only one way to be cool, and it's to be yourself 100%. And I keep pointing out, both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are really good dancers. Kamala Harris is a very traditionally good dancer, but Donald Trump is a good dancer because he is 100% himself when he is dancing. And there is something about that is undeniably cool.
No. He is a good dancer because he's 100% a bad dancer. You know what I'm saying? That is not good dancing. I'm sorry. I disagree with you, but I've learned to enjoy it. I enjoy it. And the fact that he can keep doing it is hysterical to me. And so he is funny, man. The guy is funny. The problem is things that he intends as a joke, people take literally, which is, here we go back to that again. But what would happen, here's what scares me. I am astonished at the way somebody has taken over the executive branch of this government. That there are people in there, driving things that Joe Biden says and does, that there's his dance, that make no sense to me in terms of who Joe Biden has been his whole life. And so it's kind of like, well, who's in charge? Who's doing this? Where is this coming from? His speeches are extremely inflammatory. He's never spoken about this stuff before. I wouldn't mind Kamala Harris coming in and doing nothing for 4 years. But if she comes in and those people continue to drive her policy, well, now I'm scared shitless. What do you think would happen? Do you think that same group would be there to dictate what she does?
So what we're seeing right now is Kamala Harris reverting to Democrat factory settings, which is, I think, what you're alluding to about, how Joe Biden was his whole life and then sort of lost that in this current iteration. She's reversed herself on every issue. She used to support banning fracking. Now she doesn't. She used to support Medicare for all. Now she doesn't. She used to support buybacks for assault weapons. Now she doesn't. She used to support, first she didn't support the death penalty. Then she did support the death penalty. She first, said she's going to, decriminalize illegal border crossing. Now she says she supports more funding for the border. So this is a person who believes nothing effectively, and will do whatever she thinks is where the center of gravity of the party is at. So this is how you can tell whether she's going to be a radical or a moderate. Look at who she picks as her vice president. If she passes up on Josh Shapiro, who could effectively give her Pennsylvania and possibly the presidency, she will have done so because the anti-Semitic wing of her party cannot abide him because he's a Jew. That's just what's happening. There's a campaign against him. And if she does that, you know that she believes the center of gravity of the party is in the progressive wing. However, if she does take him as her running mate, I would say that that means she sees the center of gravity of the party in the moderate center. And that's actually a good thing. Even if you want Donald Trump to win, if he loses, you would rather have Kamala Harris listening to the center than listening to the far left.
That is for sure. I absolutely agree with you. I love the concept of factory settings, for Democrats, because the factory settings are what I'm used to, and I don't mind the factory settings. By the way, most of my career talking on the radio and whatnot, I was having to swat off the right because they were busy telling me what I could and couldn't say, and there was remember the moral majority and the religious right. If I would tiptoe into territory that they disagreed with, they didn't understand, frankly, and it used to drive me crazy. They would crush me. And so that was and all of a sudden my speech is being limited from the left, which is just so
crazy,
mind-boggling. It's crazy. Yeah, it's mind-boggling. And I just think this is becoming this issue. After hearing you talk to Megyn Kelly yesterday, I ended up saying to her, I realized that the number one thing that I need to champion now is freedom. I forgot that you have to fight for freedom. That we took it for granted, but you must fight for it. And nobody should be telling anybody what to say or what to do from either party. You should be fighting for your freedom, and I'm willing to fight for your right to do whatever, obviously within the lawns of the Constitution, the law and whatnot, but that our fight for freedom needs to be front and center right now. Do you agree?
I agree, but I would amend it slightly. I would say fight for the middle class, because the middle class wants freedom. The American middle class, the American working class are the most tolerant people on planet Earth. It is a canard, a disgusting canard that they're somehow racist or what have you. The working class is deeply united, and they are exactly where you are. They want to be left alone and they want to prosper. We in the elites can't fight this alone. We need to empower the working class. And the way we do that is by ensuring them the American dream again, ensuring them a middle class standard of living so that they're not working 3 jobs to try to feed their kids, so that they have time to think about these things.
Which means a thriving economy, which means productivity, which means more jobs, which means we do what we've always done in this country. Batya, are you going to be able to stick around? I'm going to interview Jennifer in a couple of minutes. Would you want to stick around and then maybe join us after I talk to her for a few, or do you have to go?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for being here. There's the book, Second Class, Get It Now. And the other book, what was the other one, Batya?
Bad News.
Second Class was the one that... Bad news, the other one, which tells you how we got to this place with the fake news and the bad news. But second class, the one we want you to read right now, in terms of all of us standing up for this fight for freedom and fight for the middle class. I think they are one and the same. All right, we'll be right back. We're going to take a little break. Please pay attention. Again, these are all people that support us, and we support them. And so we will be right back with Jennifer Van Laar after this. Many of us have not gotten over COVID. I'm not talking about the virus itself, but the response. We were flabbergasted by what the government could do to us. There is no telling what they might pull next time, and it's looking more like there will be a next time. So we all have to be what I call rationally ready. That's where the wellness company comes in. TWC is about access to physicians via telehealth, access to potentially life-saving medication. Years ago, having access to medication and telehealth might have seemed crazy, but now it seems crazy not to. Now, with claims that gain-of-function research have been done on the bird flu, I urge everyone to take control of their healthcare with the help of the wellness company. Go to drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off all their products, including the 4 medical kits, each of which has a different purpose. And we've added Tamiflu to one of them in case the bird flu does become a problem for humans. Be rationally ready. drdrew.com/TWC for 10% off. Of course, I'm a fan of the healthy aging supplement True Niagen. I've been taking it almost for a decade myself. This supplement boosts NAD, which your cells need to survive properly metabolically, and it goes down as we age. It does so with a nutrient called nicotinamide riboside, or NR, specifically patented form of NR called Niagen. It's the most efficient and trusted NAD booster. NAD can also play a role in reproductive health. Boosting NAD is recommended with prenatal vitamins for women over 30 looking to start a family. Here's Dr. Amy, also known as the Egg Whisperer, a highly influential specialist in this area.
That was when I said, this is amazing. I need every single person going through fertility to take it. I not only take it myself, my patients have shared stories. They took it and then they got pregnant naturally. And that's really my goal, is I want people to empower themselves with the tools so that they can get pregnant without my help.
True Niagen is an amazing NAD booster. You're going to want to add it to your reproductive health arsenal. And of course, it's in our family of Dr. Drew sponsors. Go to drdrew.com/True Niagen for 20% off your order. That is drdrew.com/True Niagen. Enter Dr. Drew at checkout for 20% off. I'm excited to bring you a new product, a new supplement, Fatty. I take it. I make Susan take it. My whole family takes it. This comes out of, believe it or not, dolphin research. The Navy maintains a fleet of dolphins. And a brilliant veterinarian recognized that these dolphins sometimes developed a syndrome identical to our Alzheimer's disease. Those dolphins were deficient in a particular fatty acid. She replaced the fatty acid, and they didn't get the Alzheimer's. Humans have the same issue, and we are more deficient in this particular fatty acid than ever before. And a simple replacement of this fatty acid called C15 will help us prevent these syndromes. It's published in a recent journal called Metabolites. It's a new nutritional C15, pentadecanoic acid it's called. The deficiency that we are developing for C15 creates something called the cellular fragility syndrome. This is the first nutritional deficiency syndrome to be discovered in 75 years and may be affecting us in many ways, and as many as 1 in 3 of us. This is an important breakthrough. Take advantage of it. Go to fatty15.com/Dr. Drew to receive 15% off a 90-day starter kit subscription, or use code Dr. Drew at checkout for that 15% off, or just go to our website, drdrew.com/fatty15.
I ain't Dr. Drew.
Dr. Drew. You want to spend the whole session talking about Dr. Drew?
There you go. Even you call him Dr. Drew.
Yes, that Fatty 15, that is a brand new finding. We should all be supplementing it. This cellular fragility thing is a real deal, and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and other things can be affected as well. And of course, don't forget our friends at True Niagen. That's something I take every day as well. And speaking of every day, every week, users of Upside have earnings over $1 million cash back. Free Upside app gets you cash back on daily essentials like gas, groceries, dining at over 100,000 places, and it is real cash back, no confusing rewards, points, or credits, just money you can transfer transfer straight to your bank account. Users can earn 3 times more cash back with Upside than any other product, including loyalty programs and credit card rewards. All you do is claim an offer on Upside for whatever you're buying, pay as usual with a credit card or debt card, follow the steps in the app, and get paid. Top Upside users are earning much as $300 a month. To find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside and use code DRDREW to get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. So visit drdrew.com/upside to claim this offer. That is drdrew.com/upside and promo code Dr. Drew. All right. So we were speaking to Batya. Now we're going to welcome Jennifer Van Laar. She is the managing editor, managing editor at Red State, investigative journalist. As I said, she's broken several high-profile stories. You can follow her on X at Jen Van Laar, VANLAAR. And she's been very active writing lately. Jennifer, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So I have so many different questions for you. What do you, I guess since California is sort of, you're a 5th generation Californian, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so I'm a 2nd generation Californian, and they Californians don't, the people that come to California don't believe there are such things as native Californians, but I guess they're becoming more prominent these days as time passes. But the state of our state, watching it deteriorate, has been a thing of wonder, not in a positive way. And
No,
we have
all.
a leader in there. Yeah. Tell me how to understand how we have a leader in the governor's office who has no problems closing down businesses and sort of taking on authoritarian and if not totalitarian sorts of authority in the name of public health, and keeping it that way well beyond what was what let's call evidence-based in any other state in the union, maybe save a couple. And then the same guy that is ignoring people dying in the streets by the literally hundreds of thousands magically decides that he's going to go take care of this problem now. It's enough is enough already. Who's in charge here? I actually saw him once standing in L.A. after there'd been a raid on, a gang had raided on some cargo cars, some train cars, and strew the material, all the Amazon results all over the place.
I remember
he
that.
stood in the middle of it going, who's in charge here? Who's responsible for this? Well, sir, you are. You're responsible for all of this.
Right.
And all of a sudden now he's going to take on the homeless situation because enough is enough, don't you know? What is that all about?
He's just completely out of touch with reality. And you probably don't remember this. I met you one time when you were still at KABC. And we talked outside the studio about these exact issues of the homelessness. And this must have been 2019, maybe. And we were talking about, typhoid, I think, that there could have been those diseases.
No, what I was saying, I'll tell you what I was saying. What I was saying was at that point we had a mayor we had 100,000 people dying every year, and then we had a mayor that allowed the rat infestation on these homeless encampments to bloom to the multi-millions of rats. And I said, in this region of the world, rickettsial disease is transmitted through rat, fleas, and ticks, and there will be outbreaks of things like plague. It just will happen. It's just part of the biology of this system. And how dare you?
But then we were talking about the homeless people dying, a lot of them schizophrenic and drug addicted and that kind of thing. And it's interesting to me that in the years since we had that conversation, the point that you were making was how inhumane it was to allow these people to decide, because they aren't capable of deciding, to live on the streets and die. And how that needed to be more of the message that was being sent by people who care about actually solving the problem. And I've been heartened to see that is the message that is now starting to be said
slowly.
And so, thank you for that. But for Gavin Newsom to now turn around in the last week and say, hey, local jurisdictions, I gave you the tools, use them, do it, is just hilarious and sad, because he's been hamstringing local jurisdictions for as long as I can remember. And so now, because he wants to get up to Washington or whatever he wants to do, all of a sudden he's saying, who's in charge?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I figured it was. He has to appeal to a larger audience now than just this brainwashed state of California. Why is Kamala Harris avoiding press conferences?
She's terrible at them. She comes out with word salad that's worse than Joe Biden, and she's allegedly in charge of her faculties.
Well, I would not. I would not accuse her of not being in charge of her faculties. But she does speak in circular, nonsensical ways.
Yes. Yes. And you put her in front of the teleprompter. Yeah. Someone else was commenting today that she looked so happy and more likable than ever this week. And that's true, because she's probably so relieved that Joe is out of the way. And now can let that happiness show. But the true Kamala will come back out very quickly. And the true Kamala, she is a radical and a Marxist, but she's also a flip-flopper and will try to change her position daily or weekly as it suits whatever goal she's looking for at that time.
And so what are her goals? What motivates her? Do we know?
I mean, I think that she just has a chip on her shoulder, because when she came into San Francisco politics, we all know how she got into that, but it's a very incestuous kind of place. And Newsom was kind of have the pedigree, and they came up at the same time, but she was the outsider that had to make everyone like her and go forward with that. So as I've studied her, I see her as someone who always feels that she has something to prove to get to the next level and doesn't really trust anybody. And so you see that come out in the way that she treats her employees. There's been a lot of stories about that this week, and in her flip-flopping, because she's trying to just climb to the next level, just have whatever she can hold on to get herself up to that next level.
So if she's, what do we call that? Opportunism or something? She's just going with what, or we'll just call it a politician, I guess. Let's call it a politician. Right. Do you think once she does get to the ultimate office that we might see something more genuine? And if that's so, what is that going to be?
Well, from everything that I've seen, the constant thread is that she does have those Marxist ideologies. I mean, her parents were the students up there in the Berkeley area, and pretty radical. As San Francisco DA, once she got caught doing things like letting illegal aliens go through these job training programs for jobs that they couldn't even legally hold, or she got caught with allowing these illegals to stay in the country that then committed violent crimes, then she would backtrack a little and say, "Oh, I didn't know that was happening. I didn't know that was happening." And that's her standard thing. She does what she believes in, and then when she's caught, she claims that she didn't know that was happening at some staffer's fault.
Let me bring Batya back in, because I want to get deeper into the border issue. And Batya, you brought it up from the context of its impact on the working class. But do you have a sense? I'm going to ask both of you this, Batya first. What's motivating I think the border hawks would be the people that want the open border, right? Not the closed border. And so what was motivating these border hawks, do you think? Batya, you first.
To keep the border open?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think it's very clear if you listen to Alejandro Mayorkas, who's in charge of the border, right? He's the head of DHS. He saw his job as supplying low-wage workers to what he would call desperate corporations who are desperate for workers. So in the post-COVID labor crunch, American workers were able to, for the first time since 2019, because Donald Trump also got them a big wage increase, 4.5% wage increase for the first time in 50 years. But aside from that, it was their first real wage increase in 5 decades, because there was a labor crunch, right? And what happens when you have a labor crunch? It's like the most obvious supply and demand. You have less of something, it's more expensive. And that's what happened with labor. So American workers were doing well. And I think that Joe Biden, probably not Biden himself, but the people around him decided that this was what was causing inflation, and that the way to control inflation was to lower working class wages. And the way that you do that is by radically increasing the supply of workers. Every single time Alejandro Mayorkas was hauled before Congress or gave an interview, whether it was on CNN or Fox News, he would say, Our corporations are desperate for workers. He turned his job into basically a partnership with the cartels, a terrorist organization that rapes probably 80% of the women that enter this country. He turned them into a jobs program for American corporations to bring down the wages of American workers on purpose in order to tame inflation. That was their ideology behind. That's my theory about why they were so intentional about it.
Yeah, that actually really makes sense to me. I've never heard that theory before because, of course, inflation really only becomes significant when you start seeing labor inflation, wage inflation. Jennifer, do you agree with Batya?
Oh, I agree with that. And I think with Kamala, there's also a bit of a misplaced compassion that she thinks that allowing the people to come through the border this way that is some way to share the American dream with all these people. But as was pointed out, a lot of the women that are coming through are raped. Everyone's beaten. They're disposable. When I was at the border one time, one of the agents was telling me that, if a coyote is bringing over a bunch of immigrants or they're migrants, that if a border patrol agent comes up, they will just shove them off that top fence. And it's like 40 feet high. They'll just shove people down there, or they've seen people impaled on parts of the fence. And then the coyote just runs because they're just widgets to the cartel. So it's not humane in any way, but there's this misplaced humanity that a lot of the liberals have with this issue.
I noticed they tried to bring back kids in cages, and which again, Obama policy, Trump policy, Biden policy. It's all the same holding areas. That's all. Are they going to try that one again, Batya?
Anytime you see a leftist accusing someone of racism, what they are actually doing is trying to hide the fact that they, the leftist, have made money off of whatever it is, and that the person they're calling racist has noticed this and objected to it. That is why they call Donald Trump racist all the time, because he is waging class warfare against the over-credentialed elites. He's on to them. He is the first president in 50 years to shrink income inequality. Have you guys ever even heard about that? Of course you haven't. It's been totally hidden from the American people. He shrank the gap between the top 25% and the bottom 25%. And that is what they always deploy the language of sexism or racism as a smokescreen for the class divide that they are benefiting from. I'll just give one other example of this. The language around toxic masculinity. It is not an accident that this language became unbelievably popular at the exact same time that it was suddenly impossible for a man to support a family on a single income. Okay? That used to be the American dream in the 70s. You're a man, you're a provider, you get self-esteem from that. You see yourself as a protector. You see yourself as a person like J.D. Vance, by the way, whose number one goal in life is to be a good husband, a good father, and a provider for a family. The Democrats created an economy in which that was no longer possible. And then to mask their culpability, they said it is now toxic to want those things. It is now a crime to approach a woman in a bar and ask her for her number, right? Mating rituals, machismo, men having self-esteem and pride in their brawn, in their physicality. They turn these things into crimes as an alibi to hide the fact that they have made it impossible for a man to support a family, which of course the middle class cannot exist without that. And guess what? You cannot have a stable democracy without a thriving middle class.
I have a friend in New York City who had been kicked out of 2 different bars for daring to ask for a phone number. Actually, one, I think he was daring to buy somebody a drink and then daring to ask for a phone number. So there you go. Jennifer, I'll let you pile on to that, but also if you'd comment on something that's also confusing to me, which is the amount of money we're spending on we're supposed to help people share in the American dream, and yet the money we're spending in those people to share in the American dream should be going to the people that are Americans and need help sharing in the American dream. What do you say?
Well, that's absolutely true. But back to the toxic masculinity, thing. It's interesting now that that's weird. The toxic masculinity term has now been replaced with weird. It's weird to want to be a man that gets married and has children. There was some woman on Twitter last night saying, I'm a few years older than JD Vance, and the reason I'm not married with kids is because I keep meeting a bunch of JD Vances. And I thought, oh, okay. Does that mean the guys that you think are weird are probably the ones who will be a good provider, a good husband, a good father, and you just discount them? Maybe you should do a little reflection on your attitude with this. So that's just an interesting shift.
Hang on a second. Let's go further. Let's go further down. I didn't know we were going to go down this rabbit hole, but let's go further down it. And I'm going to have each of you comment. I run into a lot of unhappy women around your age these days, and I'm seeing it's changing. A lot of complaints about where are the men, where are men, where are men, and the men are frankly they're going to dating apps in Ukraine and stuff. They're going overseas because they can't. They're so badly treated oftentimes in this country, but they're around. But or maybe you've been rejecting them and calling them weird. So I'm seeing that on one side. And on the other, suddenly, I'm seeing and again, I don't know how much the algorithm just has sent me a bunch of stuff, but women coaching other women to have an appreciation for maleness. I guess I'd sort of see it as that. Jennifer, you first. What's going on here?
I think both of those things are happening. I think that over the last few decades, there's been so much toxic rhetoric. I hate to use that word again, but again, about gender roles and that kind of thing. And everyone is so confused about what they're supposed to do. And they are not listening to their own biological urges. I have one of my sons is 25 and he's been trying to look in the dating scene. He said it's hard to find a woman who wants to be a woman. And he's not talking about trying to be overbearing toward just trying to be what we think of as a traditional man. And hard to find a woman who is at least open to talking in that way. So I feel for the young people these days. I wouldn't want to be out there trying to find a good relationship.
It's hard. It is hard. It was hard 20 years ago. Now it's just getting very confusing for them. Batya?
Well, first of all, at the risk of getting in trouble, Jennifer, I think it's criminal that you have a 25-year-old and you look as good as you do.
Thank you.
Oh, that's very shocking. I was not expecting that. I thought you were 20 years younger. I feel like when I was coming up, I knew a lot of really awesome single women who couldn't find a partner. And now I feel like I know a lot of really awesome single men who can't find a partner. And I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but it's just something I'm really picking up on. Like I used to be like, oh, I have all these great girlfriends. Like I wish I could find a great guy for them. And now I feel like I have all these great guy friends. And just like you said, Jennifer, like it's so hard to think, like, there does seem to be like at some point, and I don't know, I keep coming back to this phrase, the yassification, but it's like there is something happening where, studies do seem to show that it is men who are more unhappy later in life if they don't find a partner, whereas women now who are single are often quite affluent and they're not reporting at least that they are sort of unhappy. So that myth, that sort of story of how the lonely, angry cat lady women, I honestly, I think that it's the men who are really struggling with, a lot of psychological issues that are very correlated, if not caused by economic issues.
Yes, I completely agree with you. The only caveat I would add to that, though, is I remember I was shared a podium once, this is 25 years ago, with a woman who wrote a book about, she was going to write a book about, I forget the premise she went for, which was she was going to interview the most successful women in America. She interviewed Oprah and Diane Sawyer, and she had a whole cohort of the really people that everyone was extraordinarily successful. And she wanted to find out, what they shared in common. And she found only one thing, and it shocked her. And she wrote a book about it. I forget what it was called, but it's a long time ago. It was obviously this book was put down because people didn't like it. But what she found was one thing they shared in common is they were told they could have everything. Well, the one thing they had in common is they were all childless, number one. But they were childless and pissed about it. And because they were told They were told their whole life they could have anything, they could have everything. You could be a parent and be Oprah and just do it when you want to do it. That's all. Don't worry about it. And the biological reality is different. And we actually have a much more honest conversation about that these days. But back then we did not. And they were pissed. They'd been sold a bill of goods, and that was the only common thread you could find amongst all of them. So women have to be honest with themselves about how are they going to feel about that if that window closes, or are they going to care or not? I mean, young people are not having kids anyway, right? So I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be a big issue for them. Do either of you have thoughts on this?
I do. And I think that, and I want to tie it back in with the cat ladies and JD Vance and Kamala, because I think it all is intertwined. But a very wise woman told me one time that, yes, we can have it all. We just can't have it all at the same time. I didn't start my journalism career till I was 45. I'm 52 now, because I have 3 kids and I was raising them and doing a job that I could do while I sometimes homeschooled, while I was going to baseball games and all of that. And now I have the blessing of being a young grandmother and being able to run around the yard with my granddaughter and enjoy. So I'm doing it in different ways and not all at the same time, but there's nothing that compares to that joy of having a grandchild, look at you and tell you they love you and that kind of thing. And so my advice to the young women would be to try to honor your biology in that way. But I think the way this is affecting the electorate now is you have a lot of women of my age who bought that lie when we were growing up that we could have it all and put off having kids. And now then they couldn't find the right person. And now they're not having kids and they're questioning everything and they're angry, but they're misplacing that anger onto the patriarchy and to other things. And I think a lot of that is what's leading to where we are with the liberal women.
Interesting. That's interesting. Batya?
Well, I will say again, it is criminal that you look this good at this age and that your grandmother. That's my first
Thank you.
Keep coming back to that. But also, I have a little bit of a different perspective. I think the GOP is in its big tent era. And I just think it's such a mistake to talk in a way that could alienate people. If this is all true, that these women sort of missed the moment and now regret it and are unhappy and angry, they deserve a lot of pity. And they should be welcomed in, and they should be spoken to and about in a way that makes them feel like they are part of the solution for the next generation, rather than pathologizes them. And I think that the way that JD Vance is being talked about in the media is gross. I think it's class-based. I think it's bullying. I think they're lying on him, etc. I also think he should just apologize for that stuff and say, I actually do want these women in my party. It's the same reason I think everyone should just never talk about Kamala as a DEI hire. Of course, she's a DEI hire. Joe Biden explicitly said, I'm hiring a Black woman. Don't talk about it. What if there's one Black person who for the first time in their life is considering voting for a Republican? Don't they deserve a shot at the American dream, even if they're not paying attention, even if they don't know what a DEI hire is, but they know it's about race and they don't want to hear that. So I would say everything should be pitched at the vast middle, which the GOP for the first time is, thanks to Donald Trump entirely, is poised to really capture, and not to blow it on this sort of very online, the stuff that people would post, JD posted and said before he was in such a prominent position.
I can
Last
chime in real quick.
Go ahead.
I agree on that we shouldn't be shaming any of the women that fell for that lie, because it was pretty prevalent. We should say, yes, you have a right to be angry, and let's move forward together, and let's see what we can do for this country together.
Hey, I'm looking at we've got a chat going, and somebody said, but men have been hearing for many years now, we don't need men, which is also a lie.
Agree. Fully agree there.
I would say, I don't know that it's a lie so much as like the idea that women don't want men is the lie. I mean, like women, we love men, and so on the one hand, we need men less, but on the other hand, we've been released to want them, emotionally, physically, in ways that could never be separated from economic realities in previous generations. And I would say that is the thing to celebrate. And culturally, there's a big sort of that, the yassification, which is women, girl power, rah, we don't need men, blah, blah, blah.
You're putting your finger in something very, very honest and very rich territory. I hope you both will write about that, because I think it's so honest and it's so undeniable that it will resonate even in denial. You know what I mean? People have to fight hard to deny that. And so,
I love that.
And so, yeah, it'd be an interesting topic to see people struggle with. Last topic is the rise of anti-Semitism. Batya, you mentioned it earlier a little bit. Anybody shocked? I'm shocked. I've been reading a lot about early 1930s Germany. I'm learning a lot about how these things happen. A lot of it goes into manipulation of people's, a lot of brainwashing and propaganda and a lot of hysteria. Batya, what do you say?
Okay, so I'm a little bit of a heretic on this topic. I'm a huge skeptic that anti-Semitism is rising. There has never in the history of humanity been a population that did what the American Christian population did, which is develop a religion around the idea of protecting and defending Jews rather than attacking us. American Protestants, uniquely in the history of humanity, developed a religious organization around protecting Jews at all costs. And they remained deeply, deeply philo-Semitic, and they were followed by American Catholics after 1967. This country the Jews call it the Golden Medina. This is the golden land for us. The American working class, the American middle class, the idea that these people are anti-Semitic is the most disgusting, despicable canard along the same lines as, white rural rage, that they're racist and so forth. They are not. What has happened since October 7th is that the anti-Semitism of the leftist elites, specifically in elite spaces in politics and in the university, has gone on a kind of, free for all, right? And so that's what's happened. People think the anti-Semitism on college campuses is the tip of an iceberg. This is nonsense. It is the whole iceberg. It is people at fancy universities who hate white people, who hate the working class of all races, and they also hate Jews, right? And you know what? It is an honor as a Jew to be hated by the same people who hate the working class, who will always protect us. And I just keep saying to American Jews, if you're progressive, you're backing the wrong pony. You're participating in this. You're out there calling working class people racist. You understand that you are literally giving succor to the people who hate us. So that's what I would say. I think it's all nonsense. This whole thing about Jewish students being unsafe, it really rubs me the wrong way. I think it's a crime against Jewish history to talk that way. And it's a crime against America to talk about anti-Semitism spreading here. We will never be like Canada. We will never be like Europe, because the American people are simply too good for that.
Your mouth to God's ears, as your grandmother would say. So, Jennifer, thoughts?
I mean, I agree that it's limited to the liberal elites and the college universities. I think it's always been there, but they just feel a lot more open to talk about it these days. It's weird because within academia, and I went to college in Boston, there's a lot of Jewish people in academia and in the professorship and the administrations there. And so it's just doesn't make sense to me that they would want to allow all of this rampant anti-Semitism right there in their front yard. But for some reason they do. I don't think you find it in rural America.
I was just thinking as we wrap up that we should be celebrating the weirdos. And so I appreciate you weirdos joining me here today and being willing to speak up. Yeah, because guess what? Free to be weird, right? The freedom is the underpinning of all of this, and that's what we got to be fighting for. And I just love that you guys are speaking your mind, and I appreciate you so much, Jenny, spending a little time with me here today, and look forward to reading your book and reading your columns, Jennifer, as things go along here. It's just kind of thrilling to hear you guys. Second class, there's the book. Is there either of you have, or both of you have websites in addition to your X platforms?
People can find my work at redstate.com.
Redstate.com. And then Batya?
Oh, gosh, I write all over the place. I write for Compact, I write for Spiked, and then, of course, the opinion section at Newsweek, where you will find opinion from across the political spectrum. Yeah.
We got to go there. We got to do that because that's something we need to support. So thank you guys for being here. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. God bless you, Dr. Drew.
You got it. Thank you. All right, that was fun. So we have coming up later today Susan's program.
Speaking of weird.
Yeah. Can you hear Susan there?
Speaking of weird, tune into my show today.
Yes, that'll be extra weird. It's really weird.
I mean, Drew's a weirdo too, but we're all weird. Today we have Zhao Ying Summers coming in to get psychic readings from Psychic Rebel Colby, and we're going to have a little conscious connection. It's also known as psychic speed dating. Have her meet 3 guys, see if consciously we can see if they're a good match for her.
See if the psychic can help her.
And also, Psychic Rebel Colby is great at love and relationships. So it should be fun. It's funny you guys were talking about that today because poor men. That's all I can say. And when we're done with these 3 guys, I'm sure they're all going to run for cover after Zhao Ying gets a hold of them.
Oh my God, she's been saying some crazy stuff lately on
It's
on
fun.
Twitter.
But anyways,
Or
that's what we're
Instagram.
doing at 3:00. I hope to see a lot of our Rumble followers and our Twitter followers.
I want to
and
swing
our
by
YouTube
just to
followers.
see what's going on
And if
because
you're on
Zhao
YouTube
Ying
and you want
is
to say something mean, just stop it.
Zhao Ying is so funny, and
I
so I
know.
want to see how that goes.
Yeah, she's so excited. She loves coming in here. And
Put the list back up of upcoming guests if you wouldn't mind. So we have McCullough on the where'd McCullough go? On the August 20th. We have Jonathan Turley on August 13th. Scott Adams next Monday. We'll do a special show on Monday. Keep an eye out for that. Not the next Monday or wait a minute. When are we leaving? No. We're gonna. It's the following Monday, right? Because we're
what? We're not
we're gonna
here
be
this
away.
week. Yeah, it's
we're
the
gonna be
following
away
week.
on
So we have-
Tuesday.
So next week we have Dr. Kelly coming in, right?
She's gonna come in on
the
Wednesday,
7th.
and we don't
on
have
the 8th, I have a transhuman expert coming in, Joe Allen, and potentially Brian O'Shea to talk about
transhumanism
Metaverse.
expert. That's different from a trans
Yes.
person. Yeah, transhumanism expert.
Did I
Yes,
say
different than
transhumanist? I
transhuman.
say
I just want to be clear because
transhumanism.
transhumanism is that's another big deal of its own. That's like the
We already
different
had a
thing.
trans
implants
person.
and-
We did
Different
that
thing.
We did that last week with
And
Nikki.
Dr. Vicky with John Bowden, who's always interesting, got some good data for us. And we have not yet scheduled my guest for the 8th. Is that correct? And that will be early, like it always
We
is.
haven't decided yet.
Or are we even getting back in
No, we
time
don't
for
get
that?
back until we have a flight, so we probably aren't doing a show that day unless Kelly wants to sit
Okay,
in.
so I'm going to be out all next week. No, is that right?
Pretty much.
No, it's all next
possibly,
week.
possibly
You can
that's
be
what
on
it-
my show if you want.
unless we do like
Unless we
some
could do-
pop in or something. Yeah, we might do a caller show or something
Or
like
my
that.
show later, like at 2:30 or something.
Friday?
Who knows? Yeah, or Friday.
We're flying in on. We moved our thing because we have a big event on Wednesday, and we're not back. So we didn't book anything Wednesday because now we're not getting in until
Well,
time.
Kelly's going to be here on Wednesday. You're going to be here on Thursday. I would like to be here on Friday
No,
if we can pull
Kelly's
that off.
here on Tuesday, and then there's nothing on Wednesday, and Thursday is my show.
Can you put the schedule back up for me? Let's make sure we get this right.
Drew, can we talk about this later?
Well, I just want to see what we just promoted, though, just to make sure that
I know.
because I thought I saw Kelly on the 7th up there. I do. Kelly's up there on the 7th, which is Wednesday.
Oh, okay. Well, we don't have anything on Tuesday then.
Right.
So we won't see you guys next week. So load up, load up on the shows that you've missed, and thank you for watching today. We had a good crowd, and I'm very proud of that conversation. So
The one we just had?
yeah, it was really
Yeah, it
good.
was very interesting.
Share if you care. We really
Yeah,
appreciate
they
your.
did not
Yeah,
disappoint.
I got to read Newsweek now. I was not expecting that.
I know. I want to support that, right? I wasn't either. I thought Newsweek was like everything. I can't believe it. Can't listen to it. Can't. But if they have a real discussion in there, I'm into it.
And support our sponsors at drdrew.com/sponsors. It really helps our show stay here for you whenever you want it, anytime you want it.
CDR is saying I look too thin. Well, I lost about 14 pounds, 14 pounds, doing a V-Shred program, and it's been staying down kind of easily. So
Yeah, it's
there it
down.
is.
So
And
is
maybe you're not
mine.
used to seeing me at this weight, and maybe at this age, at this weight, it's a
I finally
different
lost an inch in my waist.
So there you go.
V-Shred, everyone.
All right. We will call it a day and be back at 3:00 with Susan's program. So we'll see you there. Ask Dr. Drew is produced by Caleb Nation and Susan Pinsky. As a reminder, the discussions here are not a substitute for medical care, diagnosis, or treatment. This show is intended for educational and informational purposes only. I am a licensed physician, but I am not a replacement for your personal doctor, and I am not practicing medicine here. Always remember that our understanding of medicine and science is constantly evolving. Though my opinion is based on the information that is available to me today, some of the contents of this show could be outdated in the future. Be sure to check with trusted resources in case any of the information has been updated since this was published. If you or someone you know is in immediate danger, don't call me, call 911. If you're feeling hopeless or suicidal, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-8255. You can find more of my recommended organizations and helpful resources at drdrew.com/help.